I would love to share a story with you. This is called The Peddlar of Ballagheradeen. Ballagheradeen was his home. Oh, he lived in a small little cottage, so tiny you could open the front door at the same time you opened the back door, and you could reach out and put the kettle over the fire. In his garden, he grew cabbages, corn, carrots, all manner of good things, but his pride and joy, it was the enormous cherry tree. Oh, the cherry tree bore fruit and blossoms that were sweeter and more filled with beauty than those anywhere found in the countryside. And of course, as the garden would grow, well, the small things would come. The rabbits and the squirrels, the blackbirds, and the neighbors would say, "Oh, Peddlar, you're a poor foolish man entirely. You let these thieving creatures come and steal from you, and don't lift a hand to stop them." And he would say, "Each one of these creatures pays well. Why, look at the blackbirds in yon cherry tree. They sing sweeter and more beautifully than the blackbirds in any tree around the countryside." When he wasn't gardening, well, then he was off to market. His pack, his harp slung over his back, trinkets ready to spread out in the county fair. In no time at all, he'd have a gathering, for the young ones would come when they saw him there. And this young maid, she would ask, "How much for a story today? How much for a story of love, romance, hope?" And he would say, "That will cost you 2 shillings. And she would turn away crestfallen. And he would say, "Nay, you can have it for a smile on that pretty face." Like as not, some young lad would come along and say, "How much for a story today? How much for a tale of hero and adventure?" And he would say, "That'll be half a crown." And the lad, he would turn, shoulders slumped, ready to walk off. And he would say, "No, my mistake. Today adventure stories are free." And the neighbors, they would look at him and they would say, "Poor simple man. He is a fool entirely. Like as not, he'll be begging at our back doors like all the wild creatures come the cold months of the year." Time, it has a way of going so fast. And the years, they speed by. And there comes a time where the Peddlar of Ballagheradeen is no longer a young man. There comes a time when his pack no longer jingles with trinkets, when the strings of his harp have been broken. There comes a time where he goes into the kitchen in his small little cottage and finds that the cupboards are bare. And he realizes that perhaps the neighbor folk were better at predicting the future than he thought. Well, that night, the old man goes to sleep hungry. And like as not, a hungry man will dream. And that night, there's a knock at the door in his dream. He rises, he opens the door. To his amazement, it is the goddess Bridget herself. Patron saint of singers and smites, of poets, craftsmen of all sorts. He makes ready to bow. She says, "I do not need you to bow. I need you to listen." She says, "Peddlar of Ballagheradeen, you must go to Dublin. This very day when the sun rises, you must find the bridge that spans the River Liffey, and there you will hear what you need to hear." Well, the morning sun, it dispels all of the shadows, all of the confusions of the night. In the morning his hunger, it is stronger than ever. And he thinks to himself, it was just a dream. And hunger, it makes a very poor traveling companion. I'm better off here. But that night, the dream returns, and the night after that, and after the third coming of the dream, he knows well enough that this is a dream to pay attention to. And he sets off on the road, his heart weighed down, even as his pack is light. For he has nothing to offer the dogs that come trailing after him, and he has no time to offer a story to the young ones he meets. In no time at all, he comes to the great city of Dublin. While the crowds of people, they move this way and that way. They're like a tide, a river, a sea, sweeping over the cobbled streets. And he comes to the River Liffey. He comes to the bridge, right there in front of the head inn of Dublin. And he waits all day, leaning up against a post, weak with hunger. But although he listens with keen ears, although he waits with an open heart, no one stops to speak to an old man leaning against a post on a bridge. At last, as the sun begins to set, he feels that he's been a fool. Picks up his harp, he turns to go, and just then he hears someone calling out to him. He turns. It is the landlord of the head inn. He's standing at his door, and he says, "Poor simple man, come and speak to me all day. I have seen you standing there, watching the people move this way and that. No one stopped to speak to you that I saw. Tell me, what is it that you're doing?" The peddler, he opens his mouth to speak, and the landlord says, "Where are my manners? Sure, I can see that hunger and weariness are upon you. Sit down." He brings out ale, bread, meat, and cheese. And as the peddler eats, he begins to tell his story. He says, drawing himself up in his chair, 3 nights running, I had a dream. Well, the landlord bursts out laughing. He says, I could tell from looking at you that you were the type to be having dreams. And what's more, you'd be the type to listen to them. Why, I myself, I pay attention to no better dream than this. He reaches in his pocket. He pulls out some gold coins. The sound of gold. That's my dream come true. He puts the coins back in his pocket, slaps the peddler on the shoulder, and turns to return to his customers. The peddler sighs, finishes his meal, picks up his belongings to go, but as he's heading out the door, the landlord calls out and he says, "Wait a minute, Master Peddler. Your words have put me in mind of a dream I had myself. 3 nights running. 3 nights running. The goddess Brija herself came to the door of the head inn of Dublin. She said to me, 'Landlord of the head inn, this very day on the sunrise you must head to Ballagheradeen. There, at the crossroads, you will find a small cottage and a beautiful cherry tree. There, you must dig down to the roots of the cherry tree, and you will find what you need to find.'" He laughs again. "Ballagheradeen, I've never heard of such a place. Digging down to the roots of a cherry tree. I've got better things to do with my time," and turns back to his customers. Well, the peddler of Ballagheradeen, he wastes no time. His feet are swift upon the road, and his return is joyful. He puts down his harp, he picks up a shovel, he digs down, and there at the roots of the cherry tree, in his own backyard, right in front of his snug cottage, right there at the crossroads, he finds a chest of gold, much gold, Spanish doubloons, coins and jewels in plenty. He laughs out loud, and he says, "'Tis true. Home is where we find what you truly need." I can't even tell you half of the good the peddler put in to the spending of the treasure he found. There at the crossroads, right next to his snug little cottage, he built a resting place for all weary travelers upon the road. They would come inside, sit down by the fire, and over a simple meal, he would listen to their stories and tell them his own. as all must. The people in the village, they wanted to remember his kindness, his gifts of story, an open door, an open hearth, and an open heart. And so right there at the crossroads, they built a statue of an old man, the Peddlar of Ballagheradeen, harp strapped to his shoulder, children sitting at his feet, hungry dogs snacking on the triscuits and the trinkets, all of the delights found within his pack. And there it stands to this very day. May you find rest when the road is long. May you find a warm hearth when your hands and feet and heart are cold. And may there always be a story in your pack ready to share with those who are hungry for them.